I have been diving deep into fitness tracking wearables lately, and I've been testing out big names like Garmin, Aura, and Whoop. But there's one brand that's been missing from my lineup this entire time: FitBit. Which is funny because Fitbit is actually where my wearable journey started over a decade ago. So today, I am coming back to Fitbit to answer a question I think a lot of people are asking right now. Are these two budget Fitbits, the Inspire 3 and the Charge 6, still worth buying today? And if so, which one should you actually get? But quick note before we go any further, the Fitbit devices and all of these wearables that you see in this video were purchased by me. So this is a fully unsponsored take on all of them. But before I compare the Inspire 3 to the Charge 6 directly, I want to address the bigger question first. Is Fitbit as a brand still worth it? So in case you forgot, like I did, Google actually acquired Fitbit a few years back, and that has changed things in a few ways. So now you need a Google account just to activate and use your Fitbit, which is something not everyone is going to be thrilled about. And also, the pace of hardware has really slowed down. Both the Inspire 3 and the Charge 6 are a couple of years old at this point. And Fitbit's higher-end products, the Versa 4 and the Sense 2, are even older. So the hardware isn't exactly fresh. But with that said, the competition has not lapped Fitbit the way that you might expect. So the Fitbit health ecosystem is genuinely one of the most mature out there, and it's built on over a decade of sleep research and real health data. Like my first wearable tracker really was a Fitbit, so it's been around for a while. And also, the app has gotten a lot better since Google came in. So the sleep tracking, the stress monitoring, and the daily health data are still among the best that you're going to find at any price point in the consumer market. And here's something I did not fully appreciate until I came back to Fitbit after years away. When I logged back into my Fitbit account for the first time in almost 10 years, all of my old data was still there. Every step, every sleep session, going all the way back to my very first Fitbit. Seeing over 20 million steps really made me realize that the data is actually worth something. So your baselines, your sleep trends, your patterns over time, they give every new data point context. And if you switch platforms, you lose all that data and you start from zero. No other brand makes it easy to take your history with you, and that's not an accident. It's by design, and it's worth factoring in before you commit to any wearable ecosystem. So my honest verdict on the brand Fitbit is that it still holds up well for everyday health awareness. If you want clear, actionable data without having a steep learning curve, Fitbit is still a solid choice. Okay, let's get on to the actual comparison. So the Fitbit Inspire 3 runs about $100, and the Charge 6 is about $160, though both of these go on sale pretty regularly for a lot less than that. Neither one of these feels cheap, which is genuinely impressive at these price points. They both have solid builds and comfortable silicone bands that can be swapped out for third-party options if you want different colors or materials. They both also have color AMOLED touchscreen displays, and they're both water resistant to 15 meters, so you can shower and swim with them without having to worry about it. In terms of physical look, the main difference is really about their presence on your wrist. The Inspire 3 is slim, and I find it to be a lot more discreet because it looks like a narrow watch. Meanwhile, the Charge 6 is wider and thicker with a noticeably larger screen. So if you have a smaller wrist like I do, I personally feel like the Inspire 3 looks and feels a lot more proportionate. But if you want something that reads clearly as a fitness tracker, then the Charge 6 delivers that. Neither is wrong, they're just different aesthetics, and it comes down to personal preference. Now, a couple of practical things worth knowing about both devices. They each have proprietary chargers. And even though those chargers look nearly identical, they're not interchangeable between the two models. So keep them labeled if you happen to have both devices. And also, the Fitbit app only supports one active Fitbit connected at a time. So if you own both or are trying to share the app with someone who also has a Fitbit, you will have to manually swap which device is paired each time. And this factored into testing because I really wanted to test both side by side to see how they collected data, but I couldn't really do that. Now, setting up either device is really smooth. You just download the Fitbit app to your phone and follow the prompts, and you're up and running in just about 5 or 10 minutes. Now, one thing to know if you have not used a Fitbit recently. Because of the Google acquisition, you now need to have a Google account to activate and use Fitbit. Now, in terms of what these devices can actually do, almost everything that the Inspire 3 has, the Charge 6 also has. So they can both work as standalone wristwatches that show you the time and the date. They both let you set alarms and timers, and also show you smartphone notifications. And they can track over 40 different types of exercise. You also get 24/7 heart rate monitoring, blood oxygen tracking, detailed sleep tracking, skin temperature monitoring, and a stress management score. Now we'll get into the tracking accuracy in just a little bit. But one caveat that applies to both of these trackers is that neither has an altimeter, so they can't count stairs or track elevation. So if you're a hiker or you do a lot of stair climbing and you want credit for that, this gap might bother you. There's also one feature that the Inspire has that the Charge 6 does not, and that's a built-in relaxation mode that you can start doing right from the device. On the Charge 6, you have to do that through the app instead. Everything else that is unique in this comparison is on the Charge 6 side. An ECG app for heart rhythm assessment, and an EDA sensor for more sophisticated stress measurement, as well as Google Wallet for contactless payments, Google Maps navigation on your wrist, and YouTube music controls. Those could be meaningful additions, but whether they actually are worth the price difference really comes down to personal preference. But I think that there's one feature that's going to make you choose the Charge 6 over the Inspire 3. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But first of all, let's talk about that fitness tracking. How accurate is all of it? Well, having tested a lot of fitness trackers, my take is always the same. No one really knows which brand is the most accurate. The numbers are always slightly off across every device that I've tested, whether it's a smartwatch or a smart ring, and it's really hard to benchmark any of it with certainty. After wearing both of these Fitbits for a week, my opinion really hasn't changed. What matters more in practice is the trend over time. It doesn't really matter if you walked exactly 1,000 steps versus 1,500 steps. You just need to know that you walked throughout the day. Now, along those lines, both of these devices can track sleep stages, as well as generate a daily sleep score, monitor your blood oxygen overnight, and track your skin temperature. And because you can only connect one Fitbit to the app at a time, I could not test these side by side for accuracy directly. But I compared the Inspire 3 sleep data against my Oura Ring, which is generally considered one of the gold standards when it comes to consumer sleep tracking. And on some nights, the total sleep duration was pretty close. On other nights, it was off by more than 30 minutes. And this is why I say take the exact numbers with a grain of salt, because no tracker truly knows down to the minute or the second how much sleep you actually got. But when it comes to sleep tracking, both of these Fitbits do have SpO2 sensors that monitor blood oxygen saturation passively overnight. Now, this is a real hardware feature that's included in the base device with no premium subscription required. We'll talk more about that subscription later on in the cost section. But Fitbit uses that SpO2 data as part of the sleep score and also the breathing rate metrics. So it's working in the background every night, whether you actively look at it or not. So, to me, the single most important difference between the Charge 6 and the Inspire 3 is GPS. And I think for most people, it's going to be a deciding factor. So the Inspire 3 uses connected GPS, meaning it borrows your phone's GPS signal over Bluetooth. So your phone has to be with you if you want route and distance tracking to work. Meanwhile, the Charge 6 has true built-in GPS, so it can track your route, your pace, and your distance completely on its own. You can leave your phone at home. So if you like to run, walk, or cycle outdoors regularly, and you want to go without a phone, that one difference settles the comparison. The Charge 6 is worth the price gap for GPS alone. But if GPS is not part of how you actually work out, you're going to be paying for a feature that you rarely touch, and the Inspire 3 is the smarter buy. Now let's talk about battery life. So the Inspire 3 gets 8 to 9 days of real-world battery life when it's set to auto-wake display mode. If you switch to always-on display, that drops roughly in half to 3 to 5 days. Meanwhile, the Charge 6 gets about 5 to 7 days without GPS, and that drops to 4 to 5 days if you're using GPS daily. So that gap is real, and it's worth planning around. If charging weekly or less is important to you, then again, the Inspire 3 wins that conversation pretty clearly. Now, both of these devices sync automatically in the background, and the phone app experience is basically the same because they're running on the same platform. I admit that I've only tested this on iPhone so far, but I haven't run into any syncing issues. But while we're talking about the app, it's worth addressing FitBit Premium. So both devices come with 6 months of free FitBit Premium, which is worth about $60. After that, it's about $10 a month or $80 a year. Now, Premium is optional. You don't have to use it. You'll still be able to access your data even if you're not paying for Premium. But if you do pay for Premium, you're unlocking deeper health insights, as well as guided programs and the full sleep score breakdown. The free tier is genuinely useful, but Premium meaningfully expands what you get out of the data. So factor that into the total cost before you buy. One thing to mention on the Fitbit ecosystem, and this is actually the most forward-looking thing happening with the brand right now. Fitbit has been rolling out a Gemini-powered AI health coach inside of a redesigned version of the Fitbit app. It's a personalized assistant that actually talks to your data. So you can ask it things like how to improve your sleep or what your stress trends mean, and it responds based on your actual Fitbit history rather than just giving you a generic answer. They are also experimenting with pulling in medical records, like a coach that can reference your real lab results alongside your wearable data. And all of this is genuinely interesting territory. Now, they're really clear that this is not a medical diagnosis, but it's an early awareness signal. Now, to be honest, a lot of this is still in beta, and it does require a premium subscription. And Fitbit's own disclaimers acknowledge that AI responses can be incomplete or inaccurate. So go in with realistic expectations. But the direction is genuinely interesting, and it's one area where Fitbit is doing something that Garmin currently is not. So if the hardware argument against Fitbit feels a bit dated, the software argument is quietly moving the other way. So let's recap the costs here. The Inspire 3 runs about $70 to $100, and the Charge 6 runs about $160, but remember, both of these do go on sale pretty frequently. Both include 6 months of FitBit Premium for free, and as I said, the value question really comes down to GPS. If you really need it, then the Charge 6 earns its price. But if you don't, you're paying $60 to $90 more for features that you probably won't even use. And the Inspire 3 might be better for you. So the Inspire 3 and the Charge 6, which of these budget Fitbits is best for you? Here's how I would think about it. The Inspire 3 makes sense if you're getting your first fitness tracker and you don't want to spend a lot of money on it. Also, if you mostly exercise indoors, or you always have your phone with you when you're outdoors anyway. It's also the right call if battery life is a priority, or if you just want the core Fitbit experience without paying for extras that you won't use. And honestly, if you prefer the slimmer, more minimal look, that is also a valid reason for going with the Inspire 3. So this is the right starting point for most people. On the other hand, the Charge 6 makes sense if you like to run, walk, or cycle outdoors, and you want to leave your phone behind. Also, if you want to use Google Wallet on your wrist, as well as access ECG heart rhythm monitoring, or just have a more feature-complete device overall. And if you're a serious athlete, or if you want the most current hardware available, it's worth looking at another brand altogether, like Garmin. As someone who works out 5 days a week and sometimes trains for races, my personal everyday fitness watch is the Garmin Venu 4, which is significantly more expensive than these Fitbits. But for how I use it, it's genuinely more useful for my needs. And I'll be having a deep dive into my Garmin in another video coming out soon. So to answer that original question, is Fitbit still worth buying? Yes, but for the right person. The sleep tracking is genuinely excellent, and the app is really well developed, and the health data is actionable. These are not super flashy devices, but they're reliable, they're comfortable, and they do what they promise. What Fitbit is not right now is cutting edge. So if you want the newest hardware or the most advanced athletic training, then Fitbit has not really kept pace with other brands like Garmin on those fronts. But Garmin does cost a lot more money. So just go in knowing that, and you won't be disappointed with Fitbit. If this helped you make a decision in any way, let me know in the comments down below, because I loved checking out new health tech, and I always want to know what you guys are interested in. So let me know what other reviews you want to see. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.